thanks for joining me from the source today. I've got Darren Chatburn, who's one of the senior mortgage brokers at Vision Property and Finance. Welcome, Darren. How are you going today?
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to have a bit of a chat with you. It's really good.
Excellent. So what we do, once a month we have a chat to a mortgage broker and just sort of find out what's happening. And I know that it's a fast-moving industry in terms of impacted by so many different factors. So I was just wondering if you could let us know what's the latest trends in the mortgage space at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's probably two major trends at the moment that we're seeing. One of them is probably something that you're familiar with, the term mortgage cliff, where we've got probably about 1 million Australians who fixed their rates on very low rates about 2 to 3 years ago. When I say low rates, we're probably talking about 1.89 to maybe 2.29. And those rates are all coming off those fixed rates as we speak, really. The majority of them seem to be coming off sort of August, September, October. And then there's obviously a lag for people's rates then go from 1.89 to 1.99 to potentially 5.5% to 6%. So massive repayments and a big shift in their budgets and how they spend their money. So and I guess that sort of translates over to the next sort of trend, which is obviously people then, as a result of those rate changes, people are then looking for refinancing. So refinancing is probably the biggest thing in the marketplace at the moment as far as mortgages go, because people are, I guess, a little bit panic-stricken by suddenly having their mortgage repayments quadruple or triple. And looking to obviously the best deal out there in the marketplace. But the interesting trend is that we've got a lot of people who are effectively got debts that they really can't afford anymore. So a lot of people are actually stuck with their existing lender because they can't move because obviously on those much higher interest rates, and then lenders are using a 3% buffer. So technically, you have to be able to afford your mortgage on interest rates of about 9%. Including that buffer that the lenders use. So, so the trend, I guess, is that a lot of people are stuck with their mortgages. So therefore, there's a lot of repricing going on at the moment. So we're very busy doing that, trying to reprice them and get the lowest possible rate that they can with their existing lender.
Repricing basically means going back to the lender and seeing if you can get a better rate from them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. So, so knowing that they can't really move, we've just got to get that lowest possible rate for them with their existing lender to keep their repayments as low as possible. And then obviously for those that can afford to move, then refinancing is a really good option to get them a much lower rate somewhere else.
Yeah, and I mean, the mortgage cliff is something I've been following, and I suppose I have a little bit of a prediction, which is some people, particularly in the higher end property with big mortgages, may be forced to sell and downsize as a result, just because of serviceability. The point that you raised about refinancing to another lender is difficult because of the 3% buffer is something that probably most of us aren't aware of. But yeah, it's a good point. And this is the banks protecting the consumer from going into default, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's actually government legislation that the lenders have to build in that buffer to, I guess, the whole idea is obviously giving them a loan that they can afford and not putting them into mortgage stress. And yet the very aspect of the Reserve Bank constantly raising interest rates has had the opposite effect of actually putting people into mortgage stress. So,
so I suppose most people really want to know, and there's no right answer, but what's your gut feeling on interest rates now? Have we hit the top, or is there still 1, maybe 2 to go, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, I follow the markets very closely, and there is some prediction that there possibly could be another rate rise. There was even something I was reading the other day about possibly the Reserve Bank apparently always meet on Melbourne Cup Day. It's interesting. I'm assuming they must watch the race and then decide afterwards whether they're going to increase the rates or not. But they are predicting that possibly there might be another rate increase in November. So it'll be interesting to see whether that happens. But my gut feeling is that rates will start to drop in the second half of next year. It's going to be really interesting because with this mortgage cliff and people coming off these high fixed rates, people's budgets are really really stretched to the maximum. So we're already starting to see a slowdown in sort of consumer demand, and that has a flow-on effect to hospitality and cafes and restaurants and travel and all those sorts of things. So as the economy shrinks and demand drops, that's the very thing that they're trying to achieve by reducing inflation. So one would hope that as that happens, that rates will correspondingly drop as well. But I don't think there's going to be a massive drop from the perspective, how we've had, a 0.25 increase and then another one and another one. I don't think we're necessarily going to see month by month a 0.25 drop. Maybe the second half of next year, we might see maybe 0.50 of a drop, 2.25s or something like that, but it's not going to be a massive drop.
Yeah.
But I think any drop in interest rates will be, some form of relief to people carrying large amounts of debt.
I'm absolutely positive it's not just you and me that would like that to happen.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, given the difficulties at the moment, is there one lender that you guys are using because you find them quicker to deal with or easier to deal with, or have got a special product or service that's really beneficial at the moment?
Well, there's probably two sides to that question. One of them is that there's a couple of lenders that we use that are major lenders that we find particularly good to deal with. One of them is the CBA, funnily enough, one of the biggest banks in Australia. But they are fantastic to deal with in terms of level of service. Reliability in terms of if something's super urgent, you can always rely on them to be able to escalate things and move things through quite quickly. Their turnaround times for loan approvals is currently sitting at around 24 to 48 hours. So, if you've got someone you're wanting to make a purchase and they've got to move really, really quickly, then that's probably one of the banks that we would go to, because we know we're going to get fast service and a quick turnaround. Macquarie Bank is another one that's very quick to deal with. But the interesting trend that I'm seeing at the moment is some of the lowest interest rates around are not necessarily with the major banks. They're with the smaller lenders. So there's, I guess, the trade-off is, the luxury of time. If people aren't in too much of a hurry and they're more rate conscious, then some of the lowest rates are with, like for instance, I'm doing something with a client at the moment, and Teachers Mutual Bank is currently offering a rate of 5.64, which is probably one of the lowest around. Obviously, you have to be a teacher or have someone in your family that's a teacher to be able to go through them. But that's just an example of some of the rates that are quite low compared to some of the big banks.
Yeah, great. Well, look, thanks very much. You've given us some great insights. I'd love to talk to you again in a month or two, if that's okay. But yeah, that was excellent. So just a reminder to everybody, we're talking today with Darren Chatburn from Vision Property and Finance. Your office is in Mount Hutton in the Lake Macquarie Fair, but obviously with the benefit of this Zoom and Teams meetings, you can meet anyone anywhere.
That's right, absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, thanks Darren, have a great weekend.
Right. Thanks for having me, Paul. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.